Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. How are you doing all? I hope you are doing well, staying healthy, enjoying life and must be planning to improve your life. Here we are to do so. Here daily we read a chapter of a novel to develop reading habit to improve our English, including reading, writing, listening, speaking, vocabulary at the same time enhancing our knowledge. As we know, reading is the best practice to develop all these things which help us in many ways. Reading could be one of the good hobby to make a change in our life for a long time and overall period. As we have heard from many prominent personalities that book change their life, add values, widen their knowledge. They can live other life while reading a book and get all those experience and learn from their mistake. So why to commit same mistake if we can learn from them and improve our life? So join me in this journey to become best version of ourselves. Before starting, I would love to hear your thought in comment section. Remember to like, share with your loved one to change their life as well, and don't forget to subscribe my channel. Press the bell icon for daily updates. Today we are going to read chapter 16 named In Sadness and Defeat. It is a part of novel Like It Happened Yesterday, which is written by Ravinder Singh. So we have already covered 15 chapter and today we are going to read this one. And when we will read with one chapter which will which we will cover in the next video. And then finally we will end this novel. So let's start and see what is there and what we can learn from this chapter. So let's start.
16. In sadness and defeat. From being someone who followed the English ma'am everywhere she went, I now became the one who tried to avoid her at every step. From someone who waited the whole day to get a glance of her, I actually started hiding from her. Whenever I saw her walking down the corridor towards me, I would turn around and hide somewhere. Once or twice she even called out to me, but I didn't listen. How could I? I felt cheated by her. I also felt a deep sadness within me. My friends asked me the reason for my gloominess, but I didn't say anything. I just shook my head. I began to avoid my friends and sat alone even during the break. Then, one day, while I was sitting on a bench outside the field, Nikita walked up to me. Hi, she said with a smile. I didn't respond, but my sad eyes probably told her the story. Listen, I know you like English, ma'am, she said hesitatingly. I was shocked. How had she come to know? Could she just figure out? Was I that transparent? But I chose not to admit it. What? What are you saying? I asked with as much surprise as I could manage. Girls are probably more mature than boys, at least, Nikita was. It's okay. My mother says it's normal for us to have infatuations at this age. This is a sign of our growing up, she was going on, but I wasn't listening. All I was thinking was if Nikita was able to find this out, soon my friends would find out too. Or, seeing me here with Nikita, they would think I was getting attracted to her. There would be no end to their teasing me. Nikita was still talking. Nikita. I. I have to go. I have a class. I blurted out and ran away from her. From then, I tried to act as normal as possible. Studies came to my rescue and I began to think only about my subjects and how I would do well in them. I began working hard for my board exams. Soon I began to feel normal again. The day I heard English ma'am had got married and quit the school, I didn't feel quite as much pain. I thought my board exams for class X had gone off quite well. I kept saying so to my parents, who were always worried. There was still some time before the results would be announced. Everybody was tense about it. So far, in my entire school life, I had been in the top 10% of my class. It didn't matter how fun loving I was, I had managed to stay near the top ranks. But, in all these years of school, I was yet to achieve my ultimate goal of topping the exams. There were about 100 students in the same class at Guru Nanak Public School, divided into several sections. Being the topper at this school was not an easy thing. With all my hard work, I had managed to secure the second rank in the half-yearly exams of Class 9, which had again dropped to the third by Class X. But I had a lot of expectations from the board exams that I had written. When the results came out in June July, I was in for a shock. I had scored 69% in all. This was the first time I had ever dropped below 70%. The topper from our town had scored 75%. I was 6% behind him. In the 90s, anything above 70% was a great score and a reason to celebrate. Mothers whose kids had done well had all the reason to call up and flaunt their kids' marks in front of those whose kids had scored less. My son scored 72%. How much did yours score? As if you didn't know. I felt ashamed, embarrassed, guilty, and humiliated, all at the same time. It had been my worst performance ever. And the board exams are discussed beyond the boundaries of school, across towns and cities. It's a benchmark, I guess, for the entire nation. I had hopelessly slipped up on this bench. Mark. When you expect fewer marks, you are able to handle this situation better. But when you expect to excel and something of this sort happens, you first have to learn how to come to terms with the dash ing of your own hopes, and then cope with everyone else's opinion about it. It was now that phase of my life. At first, I went into denial. I sent in my papers for rechecking. But there was no luck. In Hindi, I had still scored 41 out of 100. My proficiency in the national language had pulled my entire percentage down. Some of my close friends tried to console me by saying that I should be happy because I had scored 98 out of 100 in maths. But they knew, as well as I did, that maths couldn't change my aggregate. As the reality of the low marks sunk in, I slowly went into a state of depression. The mothers of the benchmarks who had scored better than me kept running into my mother and haunting my life. I wanted to run away to someplace else, where no one asked me about my exams or expected anything else of me. I wasn't good enough for those expectations, and those expectations weren't good for me. Instead of treating my friends as friends, those expectations had made me start viewing them as my competitors. This should not have been the case. Besides, despite all my hard work, I had scored way less than expected. What else could I have done? I decided to give up. One day, I broke down in front of my mother and told her that she or my father should not expect anything great out of me, because I wasn't as good as everyone else. I was smart enough but not the best, and I felt suffocated in this madness to become number one. Mom wiped away my tears. She made me lie down with my head on her lap and stroked my forehead affectionately. She told me why she wanted me to succeed. She told me how my father worked hard to afford all the expenses of my education. She told me that my father hadn't been able to complete his own education because my grandfather hadn't been able to afford it. Perhaps that's why Dad made it a point that I took my education seriously. Mom told me about the sacrifices that both of them had been making, only to afford a good education for my brother and me. She never asked Dad for new clothes for herself, only for us. She never did any shopping for herself, only for us. As a family, we never went out to a restaurant for a meal, we always ate at home. Before she told me, I never knew that most of the money that my father earned was being spent on our education. But it was in our hands to do the rest. She told me that getting good marks for me should not be a matter of winning the rat race or show ing off to everyone else. But a good education was our only way of bringing the family out of poverty. Our parents were not even concerned about themselves, only about my brother's life and mine. The only way for us to have a good life when we grew up was to score the finest of results. Whatever Mom said that evening kept ringing in my head for a long time. She had her reasons, and, indeed, she was right in holding them. As the days passed, I even started liking the song Papa Kehte Hai. It had started making a different sense to me. Soon, I wanted to become the one who could sing that song and prove to the world that I meant every word of what I was singing. This time, there was a positive change within me. I no longer envied those who were ahead of me in the rat race. I felt calm, composed, and focused solely on my own goals. And then, just like that, I returned to the rat race. But this time, I no longer felt like a rat.